Alexander.
Bonjour, and thank you, Tiffany. My name is Alexander Emesh from Pacific's Office of Small and Medium Enterprise. And I'm so happy that you've allowed us to host our Innovate with the Government of Canada panel on your platform. This panel features leaders and advisors from Ideas, Ecopia, Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Today, we're going to be talking about building resilience by accessing Government of Canada programs, initiatives, and resources. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting virtually on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Now, I want to introduce you to our panel, and I'm going to get us started with an icebreaker. So this is how it's going to work, folks. I'm going to call your name and read your title. I want you to do three things. I want you to introduce yourself, briefly inform the audience about your program and work, and answer, if you were to sing karaoke, what song would you pick? So I'm going to get started here. So my name is Alexander Emesh. I'm your moderator today. I work as a policy analyst for OSME. What we do is help small and medium enterprise navigate federal procurement. And my karaoke song is Fireworks by Katy Perry. So I'm going to get us started with Jon Lipinski. He's the president and co-founder of Ecopia, who's in phase 2 of an Ideas Challenge. Go ahead, Jon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jon Lipinski, as Alexander said, the co-founder and president of Ecopia. We're a company that's leveraging artificial intelligence to interpret geospatial imagery. Our goal as a company is to digitize the world using AI and create a digital twin of the real world. If I was to sing something karaoke, I'm actually a country fan, so it might be something like A Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt. Bit of an obscure choice, but something along those lines. So great to meet you all today.
Fantastic. Next, let me introduce you to Anita Lee. She's a Senior Industry Development Officer for Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada. So Anita, go ahead.
Hey everybody, it's Anita Lee from Agriculture Agri-Foods Canada. I work as a Senior Industry Development Officer on the files of innovation, dairy, ornamentals, greenhouse and field vegetables, and bioproducts. And I guess I think I'm a big karaoke sucker, so it have to be anything by Air Supply, just because it's so long and very dramatic, and I like that kind of stuff.
Cool. Third, we have Dr. Pam Giberson, a manager for Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, otherwise called NSERC. Go ahead, Pam.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. My name is Pam Giberson, and I work at NSERC. You might know us better by our acronym NSERC, as opposed to the big, long full name. We have a regional office here in Vancouver, obviously, and my role at NSERC is to basically link companies, mostly, with academic researchers to help companies solve some sort of technical challenge that they're experiencing through a grant that's co-funded by the company and NSERC. Karaoke, wow. I don't sing except for, when I'm alone at home. So I'm kind of stumped, but, given what we're all experiencing right now, I'm sure I would try and find some sort of very, very happy song to lift our spirits during this very odd time.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. Lastly, I'm pleased to introduce Eric Fournier, the Director General for the Assistant Deputy Minister for Science and Technology. He is the lead and developer for the Innovation for Defense Excellence and Security, called Ideas initiative. Eric, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
I hope anyway, knew a little bit about the program itself. I've just been unmuted. Good. So Ideas was launched 2 years ago. Is an access to innovation from national defense. We've launched many challenges since we've launched. We've also developed a series of tools. We have 5 tools now that we use to connect with innovators, and we try to solve problems, challenges from national defense using the knowledge, the expertise of Kenyan innovators. It's really a good definition of the program itself. Karaoke, people won't believe it. I have never done karaoke, by the way. but I would go between or ABBA or AC/DC, one of the two, but I'm not sure which one today. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Eric. So my goal for Innovate with the Government of Canada panel is to drive referrals to the right department, to see yourself within another business's success story, to set expectations, and for you to recognize a portion of the ways you can build resilience with the Government of Canada. So now we're on to questions. So the first thing I want to do is ring in the audience with a success story. So I want to ask each of you, what are some examples of success stories that you can share with the audience? So for Jon, you can tell us about your success story with the Ideas program. For Pam, Eric, or Anita, they'll be talking about companies that had success working through their program. I'm going to start with Eric from Ideas.
Okay, so I'll talk about, so as I said earlier, launched 2 years ago, we're reaching out to innovators in Canada, trying very hard to connect with small innovators, SMEs. And through all of our calls proposals, we've hit about 60 to 65%. So we're very pleased with that. So I'll tell a quick story about one of those SMEs. Small company from New Brunswick, working in cyber, responded to one of the first challenges on cyber attribution. So many proposals we have received. We decided to fund many as well. I think we funded 9 companies to start with for the first 6 months and the first $200,000. After that 6 months, they stopped. We evaluated them again and decided to pick 3 of them to keep going for the next phase, which is up to $1 million for a year. Now, that small company has done all that, came to the end of that second phase of $1 million, did a demonstration, and is now signing a contract with National Defense for us to buy their innovation as a test and evaluation that the Canadian Armed Forces will deliver. So for the next 18 months, that company is going to be working closely with us because we're going to be testing and evaluating their solution. And that contract is in the several millions of dollars. So to me, it's a success story.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Eric. I'm going to pass it on to Jon Lipinski. Go ahead.
Should make sure I'm unmuted here. Yeah, so I think our success story that I would actually speak to is also within the Ideas program. So we were one of a separate challenge, but one of the first applicants to the program when it first started about 2 years ago. There was a challenge put out for the detection and classification of objects of interest. So finding things in imagery. And our company leverages artificial intelligence to teach a computer how to look at imagery and find things within it. So it was a great fit from that perspective. And we, as a company, were trying to get into the defense and intelligence space. And so when we saw that call, it was a great way for us to enter and get a great engagement with the DND. So we went through those phases that Eric was just speaking to. The phase 1, that was about 6 months, and then successfully passed that, went to a phase 1B that we just finished a few weeks ago, actually. And we just had our demonstration yesterday for what I hope to be a test deployment within the DND. So very excited about that. But one of the reasons that I think that's a success story, I think, goes to the structure of the Ideas program. And one of the things that's unique about the Ideas program is that it comes in as it's a procurement vehicle. It's a challenge-based procurement vehicle. So one, you're actually solving a real need because it's challenge-based. The program puts out a challenge, says, can you solve this? And so we're solving a real need, but it comes in as revenue because it's a procurement vehicle. It's not just a grant that's a cost offset. So that's actually huge value to a small company who can then leverage that. If it comes in as revenue, we can leverage that to get other debt financing or equity from investors. And that's a material difference that makes the program unique. Also moves very quickly, so we're able to move through those stages and get quite a deep engagement with a customer who would historically have been, I would say, difficult to break into. I think these larger governments are naturally harder to get into, but this gave us a really quick vehicle to get in. And then, of course, hopefully can now parlay that into a larger ongoing relationship, which is really invaluable for us. And I think it's an overall success story when you're able to leverage Canadian technology to serve national defense needs. So that's my success story that I'd like to promote here.
Thanks, Jon, and thanks for helping keep Canada safe and secure. I appreciate the work you're doing. I'm going to pass it on to Pam.
Thanks, Alex. Answer, we're a pretty big organization. We work with thousands of companies across the country every year. So for us, for me personally, from the regional perspective, it's always very gratifying to start working with a small company, maybe a 5-person or 3-person startup, and see them progress through the different options that NSERC has, from really small grants to progressively larger grants, and grow their company while they do that. So we've worked with many, many different companies locally, from Terra Mera, Ballard, B-Wave, Lamazoo, lots of well-known companies that many of you will have heard of. So a large part of what I do is help those companies find the right academic to work with, because that can often be a real challenge for them. So our office is very well connected with the local university and college community. So we have a pretty good idea of what everybody's up to at those institutions. And so when a company comes to me and says, I've got this kind of a challenge, and I need somebody with machine learning expertise, or natural language processing, or chemical engineering, or something like that, or geology, right? So I can, if I don't know a person, I can certainly reach out to the department head and find somebody that's interested in working on that project. So when I make that match and it works out, then it's fantastic. You see them go off together, and they build this hopefully ongoing research collaborative relationship that is going to benefit both parties. The company's going to have their problem solved, hopefully, or at least move it forward. And at the same time, the professor and her grad students are going to be building a relationship with this local company. So it gives the students a really great opportunity to see how industrial research works, and perhaps wind up working there when they graduate.
So you're helping create a pipeline of qualified candidates potentially for industry. Is that right, Pam?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a byproduct of what we do, because our purpose is to not only help the companies solve their technical problems and then, become more competitive and grow, but a very large part of what NSERC does is the training of Canada's next generation of scientists and engineers. So it's always usually graduate students, but sometimes undergraduates as well, mostly grad students working on these projects. And so they become highly trained. If it's a really good relationship with that partner, then very often when they graduate, the companies just scoop them up.
Thank you so much. And Anita, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
So like Pam, my department has interacted with various different well-known companies in terms of helping them support a lot of their R&D, prototype development, etc., along the innovation continuum. So a lot of the funding that the government provides tends to be more on the beginning end of the innovation continuum. So it includes things such as funding towards R&D. Again, it's the prototype development, and then of course then engaging with industry to then fund to get it more towards pre-commercialization and commercialization, and then finally into onto the market and into market development in terms of within a local or an international sphere. I guess one of the success stories I'm just thinking about recently is a BC company that has developed some revolutionary dehydration technology that uses gentle vacuum and dehydrate and microwave to process food any or organic matter. It can include things such as dairy, fruits and vegetables, meats, etc. And it really is sort of a cool little item where the material is processed without having to use preservatives and additives, and also doesn't really change their natural color or taste or neutral content. So it is quite a cool little sort of technology, and we've supported them in the beginning. And again, a lot of this technology was Canadian established, so it actually had its roots in some research work that was done at UBC initially. And we, along with other federal government partners, have been able to provide different funding for different parts of development of the technology and to help them grow their business. Currently, they have about 40 different partnerships within 19 different countries, and they're actually currently seeking right now. I'm sitting on a federal group that works with them to sort of help pathfind and identify different federal government supports and programs that they can access, because they're currently looking at pivoting their operations to develop a local manufacturing division for their company so that they can allow more smaller and small-sized and local food distributors to access their technology and look at potentially developing and piloting new different food products. So again, I think that's a bit of a good success story, because we're seeing the growth of companies from a very early stage up to sort of their advanced stages, and we're still kind of supporting them at different stages.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Anita. I feel like a lot of what you're doing is advancing the Canadian economy. Is that correct?
Yes, it's looking at economy.
We have a little bit of a lag there, so I'm not sure if that's being It's okay, Anita. I think we're having a bit of a lag. It's disrupting your dialogue. No worries, though. What we're going to do is move on to the next question. So I'm going to ask everyone here a 3-part question, okay? So it goes, what are some of the common pitfalls that businesses face when trying to access your department's program? How do you set expectations? How does business come in prepared to talk to you? So once again, that is common pitfalls, how to set expectations, and how do businesses come in prepared to talk to you? So for Jon, can you navigate this question from a business's perspective? And I'm going to start with you first, Jon, okay?
Sure. So I guess common pitfalls from me entering the government, correct?
Correct. Common pitfalls, how to set expectations, tips to navigate from the business perspective of navigating federal programs or initiatives.
Sure. So I think the biggest sort of a pitfall and a way to navigate that go hand in hand. So one of I'll frame it from the perspective of what I would recommend another SME to do when approaching these programs, and that would be number one, to be proactive in your outreach and pulling together the different interested parties, because one of the things that I've realized through various initiatives is that whether it's an open-ended application or a challenge-driven system, it's really on the onus is on you as an innovator to educate the department and the end user, some cases in both, what the benefit of your technology is. So although there is a framework there that will guide you through it, I'd say to really step out, it's on you to try and find as many channels as possible to proactively engage different stakeholders, the users, show case studies where possible, and really actively educate the stakeholders through the process. So that would be one thing that I would suggest is really don't be shy and try and be proactive in promoting yourself as an SME, because I think in many cases there's some great Canadian technology that can be of huge benefit to the government and the nation as a whole. But there's an education process that has to happen. So that's my answer to the 3-part question there.
Thank you. And to clarify, you're saying 1, network, 2, market. Is that fair to say within federal departments, you're actively networking, you're actively reaching out? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Jon. I'm going to hand it over to Eric. If you could help us explain some common pitfalls, how to set expectations, and how does business come and prepare to talk about ideas.
Okay, pitfalls. Something that we've lived through a few times, people not reading. Our application process is fairly simple. The forms, in less than half a day, you're done filling the form. However, we have several cases where people did not quite read what we were asking for, put the wrong information, and because we're getting so many proposals, we're fairly strict on our evaluation process. If you don't give us what we need, in the evaluation criteria, we'll kick you out. A lot of our cost proposals are getting 40, 50, 100 proposals. So our evaluation teams have strict guides of, if you don't see what you're looking for, set it aside, go to the next one. So please read the questions so you can provide the right answer. The second one, timing. We've had some issues with timing. So Ideas was launched in April 2018, brand new program. We want to work at the speed of innovation, and in some cases we do. For example, awarding Component 1A, our first contract. However, to award our second contract, Component 1B, has been slower. We have realized that. So we're asking people to give us a bit of to be patient a little bit as we tweak our internal processes to be faster. We've identified the problems. I'll tell you what the problem is. I mean, originally for Component 1B, we were not going to allow much conversation between the innovator and our stakeholders, like the military personnel. We realized that didn't work. I mean, during that $1 million phase, we want people to talk. However, it changes the way we set up a contract. There's a lot more negotiation, so it takes longer. So we need to be better at that, and we're going to find a way to fix that. Your last piece about people promoting themselves, in a way, you can't really do that with Ideas because we work with challenges. Go on our webpage, look at the challenges, see if your expertise fit. By the way, this is not what you do today. It's the expertise that you have developed to do what you do every day. I mean, it's not because you sell shoes that you should only come to us if our challenges are about selling shoes. As you're building shoes, you're developing leather, you're developing the soles. What expertise have you developed that can be useful to our challenges? And the challenges that we're putting out, you don't need to solve the whole thing. You can solve a small piece of it. For example, and then I'll stop talking, our PTSD challenge that we launched last year, there is no single solution for PTSD. However, the team of, I think it's 9 or 10 entities that we are working on our solutions right now are each biting a small part of PTSD. Altogether, they make a very interesting solution for the military. So if you have a piece of the solution, submit something and we'll look at it that way, because our evaluators are they're looking for a part of that solution. All yours.
Thank you so much. So just to summarize, so read, review, double check evaluation criteria, hit your timing, and that this is a challenge-based innovation program. It's not just some open thing you can email whatever tech you have. It's based on the challenges of D&D of our country. So the next one I'm going to go to, and Anita, if you have any leg issues, I'll let you know. We had a little bit of a disruption last time. I apologize. So Anita, I'm going to pass that question over for you.
My apologies. Okay, my apologies about the lag time, but I would agree both with everything that's been said before. I think it is important for applicants to read sort of the questions on the application forms, but also read the application program guides, because that provides applicants with a lot of useful information, especially in terms of sort of to help explain why they are applying for the funding and what impact this would have on the sector. Because again, a lot of that is very valuable information for assessors to look at and see, this is a really good project. Because again, we do know on a lot of our funding programs, they are very highly popular. And in order to stand out, you should be able to sort of ensure that your timelines are clear, your results are not overly ambitious, right? Again, what I've seen in the past where, somebody comes up with a great idea and thinks they can get something solved within 3 years. within the span of a program period, which, may be a very good high goal to try and achieve, but it may not be very realistic. And of course, trying to see if you can ensure you gathered all of the necessary partners, if you have them on board, and ensuring, if possible, to have the necessary in-kind and cash contributions on hand, because a lot of the programs tend to sometimes be tend to be cost shared, right? And sort of having that confirmation gives a bit more credibility to your proposal. And just really in terms of sort of trying to provide enough details and sort of trying to make your case that your idea is a great idea and that it should be funded. I think those are kind of a lot of those principles. And I know people just think it's easy to do. And sometimes a lot of the businesses may not have an ability to spend copious amount of times on an application. And I think one of the things that my department has done for a lot of the funding programs is move to a two-step application process. So usually they will ask for, and a lot of other federal government departments do this, but they might ask for a letter of intent or an expression of interest, which is usually a short 2-pager, just to concisely outline what the project would be. And if that's something that is sort of meets the need of the program, then they might be then invited to submit a fuller proposal at the time. And then when I'm working with individually with my companies in terms of pathfinding programs, I will always provide a little bit of a link within a follow-up email from our meetings and highlighting very key points, if it's repayable or non-repayable funding, deadlines, etc. And also the applicable links, and also encouraging the companies to, again, read and go over all of the program terms and conditions to ensure they're aware of what's eligible, what's not, what are the limitations, etc.
Thank you so much. And this seems to be a common statement here, and this also works in federal procurement too. Reading these documents is not a lot of fun, but you need to do it. Get yourself a cup of coffee, whatever you need. Just sit through it, take a highlighter, and go through the document with certainty. Next, I'm going to pass it to Pam. Would you like to go?
Sure, thanks, Alex. I think a pitfall that we often encounter is sort of a lack of appreciation for the differences between academic research and industrial research. The motivations and incentives in those two, quite separate worlds are very, very different. And so when I speak to, say, a smallish company that's never worked with an academic before, but they're very interested in applying for or participating in one of these projects, I'm very careful to address that expectations piece, because it's absolutely critical in the early stages that everybody realizes the respective roles within the collaboration, and who is doing what and why they're doing it and what they hope to get out of it. So, typically academic research works at a slightly slower pace than industrial research, and academics are curiosity driven. Although, if you happen to be working with an engineer or a researcher in a faculty of applied science, they do work on very applied research. And so, they're usually working on projects that are much more close to, say, a prototype or something that's directly applicable to the real world. But I always encourage the two partners to sit down, have a coffee, talk in great detail about the project, arrive at the scope. What are we trying to achieve here? Are we talking about a 1-year project? Are we talking about a 5-year project? And what's our role in this project? So what's the company's role, and what's the academic's role, and what's the timeline? And so how, what are the milestones? We're going to meet, say, monthly, and go over progress, and that way things don't, fall off the side of somebody's desk and sort of get off track, because research can do that, right? So setting expectations is really, really important. I've seen projects go sideways because the parties come into the project without having that clear discussion. and partway through, they realize that it's a bit of a mismatch. So there also has to be a personality match, because it's a collaboration, and you're going to be meeting a lot with these people, right? So the research team, the professor, and the grad students are going to be meeting with the company on a regular basis. Everybody has to get along. So it's very much there's a human factor there as well. So that's why that initial meeting is important too, to see if there's a click of personalities, because that can really make all the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful research collaboration. So I am able to help with that process a lot, and quite often I will sit down with the two parties together, so that I'm available to answer questions and steer them through the process. That can often be quite beneficial. So these are the kinds of things we see, and sometimes obviously conversations about IP come up, and how does NSERC deal with that, and all that kind of thing. So these are very, very important questions. So it's good to be able to meet face to face and discuss them in some detail.
Thank you, Pam. Elaborate. So pretty much have a clear and concise discussion between the research, academia team, and the business. There needs to be a consensus there. That is a common pitfall for NSERC, is what you're saying, for businesses trying to access NSERC. Is that fair to say?
I wouldn't say it's a common pitfall. I mean, it is something that really needs to be considered. I mean, it really depends on the sophistication of the company, right? So if it's a larger company that has maybe some experience with academia already, then that conversation obviously has happened long ago. So if it's a very small company and they've never done this, I make sure that they are really aware, and then they're not just handing over money to the university and that research team is at their beck and call, right? And is going to drop everything and work on their problem, because that's not the way it works. So it's an issue that has to be dealt with.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you elaborating on that. So I'm going to ask 2 lightning round questions. It's going to be a raise your hand question. Just give me a sentence or 2. The first is, please raise your hand if your department or business has socioeconomic strategies and how you go about delivering them. Okay, so I'm going to start with Anita. Can you give us a brief description of some socioeconomic strategies for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada?
So with AFC, we do have a number of different funding programs to sort of help increase participation of underrepresented groups. That includes women, youth, Indigenous. So we have various different funding programs available. My minister has also recently conducted a number of different engagement activities, including the establishment of a youth advisory council and also a roundtable with women entrepreneurs in agriculture. We've also have an Indigenous Support Awareness Office with an in-house elder, and that really promotes Indigenous awareness within the department, but also is responsible for the Indigenous recruitment, student recruitment, and increasing Indigenous participation within the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
Thank you so much. And Pam, I saw you raise your hand as well. Can you give us a brief description?
Sure. So equity, diversity, and inclusion is a very big part of what NSERC does, and it is built into every grant application in terms of the training plan. So in that grant application, the researcher has to outline how the students are going to be trained. So what sorts of special or extraordinary opportunities they're going to have during the project that will give them skills beyond just the technical skills that the researcher would normally have. So what sorts of professional skills are they going to gain by working on this project? And also the applicant has to address equity, diversity, inclusion. What sorts of concrete practices are they putting in place in their lab to make sure that EDI is addressed and that the training environment addresses EDI issues. And also in the recruitment of students, there have to be an EDI plan for student recruiting.
Okay, my next lightning round question. Thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. Raise your hand if businesses who go through your organization's processes keep their IP. So raise your hand if they're keeping IP. There you go. Okay, so almost pretty much everyone here. So Eric, can I have you start?
Yeah, I'll start. And my first message is going to be for Jon. Jon asked a question about IP a while back, and we're still working on that answer. We haven't forgotten about you. We'll provide that answer. About IP, as part of the program, we did not reinvent any IP rules. We're using the Government of Canada clause for IP, clause 3060 or 4060. What it says is that the innovators keep their IP, and the Government of Canada has a license for use and abuse. So I would invite you to go read that statement. It's part of the PWGSC description on procurement, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel on IP, so we just decided to do that. So they maintain their IP, and we just have access to a license.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Anita, can I have you go next? Do they keep their IP?
Like I said, a lot of the times it's spelled out within the federal contribution agreement. So usually they would be able to keep it. And again, a lot of the times our funding is a portion of a lot of the stuff that they develop from a technology R&D perspective, but it's usually the applicant that gets to maintain that. And it's spelled out within the contribution agreement.
Thank you. Pam, can you go next?
Yeah, Insert has no claim to the IP. You know, what would we do with it? It's essentially. So we stay out of that altogether. I mean, we do have an IP policy, but it's very generic. You know, we don't support secret research, that kind of thing. So our policy leaves it up to the partner, the company, and the academic institution. So every academic institution in Canada has its own policy on intellectual property. Some of them have a researcher-owned policy. Some of them have an institution-owned policy. So there's differences. So we leave it up to the partners, the company and the researcher and the university to come up with a research agreement that spells out what's going to happen with the IP.
Thank you so much for elaborating that, Pam. So this is going to go to Jon. Jon, what are some tips and strategies for completing requests for proposals and navigating the government processes?
So one of the things that I would highlight was echoed actually through some of the earlier comments and just reading the actual applications and the rubric. It's funny that it's something so simple, but in many cases the evaluation criteria is laid out for you. And that should be step one, but I think in many cases that's overlooked. So I really can't emphasize enough the value and importance of reading in detail each line of the evaluation criteria. That's number one, and sort of table stakes that I think is frequently actually overlooked. Number two would be, in terms of navigating the process, would go back to one of my earlier comments and just trying to engage as much as you can. Where possible and appropriate, try and educate the end users and the stakeholders of the value of what you're doing, why it's different from the status quo, and the potential benefit to the end user and in this case to the government. So those would be two suggestions on navigating the process. I guess the third, in terms of I could tack on to the IP component. I think there's always a balance, and I think IP, of course, for companies for a growing company is very important. That's our asset as a company. Then I think you have to balance that between standard frameworks that come off the shelf, and of course that allows you to move fast. So that's awesome, and we definitely want to continue to move fast. And then there may be some specific things that we as an organization would like to see, but it's not in the standard framework. So how do you balance that versus moving fast? So I think there's a bit of back and forth that goes there, and there's a balance to be found. But those would be the three things that I would highlight.
Thank you. And Eric, did you have any comments on that? I saw you raise your head a little bit.
No, I'm fine. I raised my hand for the other piece, which was about having funding specific for groups. Ideas does not. We're for all innovators in Canada. So small companies, big companies, non-for-profit academia, but we don't target specifically indigenous people or women entrepreneurs. We assume that with our fairly large budget of close to $90 million a year, and with our outreach program that we're trying to reach out to all Canadians, we cover all that. But potentially in the future, there might be some pieces of maybe set aside, but we haven't talked about that yet.
Thank you for clarifying that, Eric. I also wanted to give everyone an opportunity, and this includes Jon as well, to share something new coming from your organization. So whether it's a new challenge or something that's in the books that you can talk about, I want to see if anyone has anything new. And I'm going to start with Jon, and you can tell us about some new innovation you're doing business-wise, or maybe a program you're interested in. Go ahead.
New, I guess I'll be. I'll self-promote here in terms of some of the exciting stuff that's coming down the pipeline for us. So some of the new technology that we're deploying now and we're coming to market with is the ability to do 3D models of cities. And that's something that we've been working on for quite some time and hoping to deploy within the government. I think that's a really exciting advancement for us as a company and for the end users as well. So it's all about basically creating a virtual representation of the real world and giving decision makers the ability to visualize, analyze, and make decisions with that information.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Can you raise your hand if you have something to talk about, just so I don't... Anything new coming from ideas, Eric? Anything new coming from NSERC, Pam?
Yeah, we always have new things. I mean, we're brand new, we're only 2 years old, so we're always thinking about new things. So our next set of challenges is coming up at the end of October. We have 7 challenges being pushed on our webpage. Oh, by the way, Ideas is fully operating on our webpage. So you can go there, Ideas Canada, and you'll be able to see past challenges, future challenges, register to our mailing list where you can get lots of information. So new challenges coming out. And we will develop classified. So Ideas right now is all unclassified. We will have a classified portion of Ideas being launched in the new year to be able to work directly with companies on very specific challenges. And we'll work with companies to get their security clearances done as well. So in the future.
Fantastic. I'm just sharing some links here for everyone's website too. So if you're interested, it didn't come out too smooth on the chat, but go and copy and paste that into your browser. We're almost out of time here. So I wanted just to know if anyone had any questions to ask their fellow panelists. If you could raise your hand if you have a question to ask your fellow panelists, please let's see if we can generate some conversation before we close. See a lot of smiling faces. I'm gonna start calling on people. So. You know what, Jon, I'm sorry to use you as a guinea pig. Do you have any questions for Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada? Do you have any more questions for Ideas or NSERC?
I think with Ideas and NSERC, we're sort of plugged in, and I think we're having, specifically with Ideas, have a lot of exciting things going on there. We're not yet connected with Agri-Foods Canada, so I'd be very interested in connecting after the call to see if there's some sort of collaboration that's potentially there, but not really a question, just more so let's connect after the call.
And fantastic. And I hope everyone who's watching this is going to connect with some of our panelists or at least go to their website. Does anyone else have any questions to ask a fellow panelist? No? Okay. Well, I want to appreciate anyone who took their time of their day and joined us. I hope at the end of this, you recognize 4 different ways you can build resiliency and capital by innovating with the Government of Canada. If you've been listening to Eric and Jon, I advise you to investigate the Ideas website and navigate to their future challenges. If you recognize your business has a technical problem and need a pipeline of researchers, check out NSERC. If you're in the agriculture and food industry, please reach out to Anita and review Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's website. If you have questions about federal procurement or need some matchmaking, I'm going to share my LinkedIn on the chat. I want to give a special thanks to Jon from Ecopia for volunteering his time to teach other businesses, his experience using Government of Canada programs and initiatives. And I also want to thank Gurwinder for his continued collaboration with OSME and his progress in helping build the Fraser Valley economically. So thank you, everyone.